Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhi no Bhavantu. May all beings be happy and peaceful. Hey guys, it is Monday, March 27th, 2023. And we've got some action on the Bitcoin front earlier this morning. Made some good money already today. I don't know about you all. For those of you in the C3, I don't always give all the technical reasons why I take trades because that would just be a whole lot. But I do as much as I can. Hi Manu, how's it going? We are going to talk Bitcoin and Ethereum mostly today. I will cover some of the alts. If you have any requests, please put them in the chat so that I know where you're at. It was interesting this weekend. I posted a tweet about Do Kwon. Got a lot of attention, almost 176,000 impressions. It was good because I realized that it is important for us right now to be speaking our truth, as much as that might feel difficult because there's so much there's so much, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so much back and forth going on right now and so many varied opinions on everything. And I think that what you'll find is that if you have been in crypto long enough, if you speak truth, that many others will agree with you. And I think it's especially important right now as we are under a full-scale invasion, you could say, that we have a sense of solidarity and that we can differ in opinions, but we can be respectful about that and not it turn into sort of hate speech. It's very tempting to do that a lot of the times. But so I digress. We're going to get into Bitcoin. But first, if you want to join me, Heaven on Earth, check out the link in the description. There is now a discount code up. This is going to be end of July. So there's still several months until this happens. And I will be in Costa Rica for all of June and a good chunk of July. And also maybe some other countries down there as well, as I explore options for continuing my profession as a crypto trader. I don't want to just trade stocks. I want to continue trading cryptocurrency. And unfortunately, I live in the United States and we have some interesting battles ahead of us, I would say. So let's look at Bitcoin on the weekly chart. First, no levels. We talked about the 200 weekly moving average being a potential support. If it can flip into support here, this also coincides with the bottom of the accumulation range, if we want to call it that, or sorry, the top of the accumulation range. So this is 25,560, and we're looking at closer to 25,200 for that retest, which may or may not happen. As I mentioned on Wednesday, when we broke out of accumulation back in 2018, we saw several weeks of sort of doji candles. There was a deceleration, but it never really fully broke down and retested. It actually continued to move upwards from there. And I'll show you that really quickly here for those that were not. You can see that right here. Okay, so it never came back down to this level here. So we still are on the fence whether this is a deviation and it's going to eventually come back inside the range. If that's the case, I'll be shorting it much lower down. If not, if it holds 25,200, then I will be much more bullish, much more on leaning to the upside, at least in the short term. So as of today, we have seen a pullback. So if we now drop down lower time frames, I'm doing this process, I'm sharing this with you because this is how I look at charts. I'll look on the weekly, I'll look maybe on the monthly even before that, and then I'll look on the daily, and then I'll drop down, and I have them all up here, clear, plain as day for me to see them. And so I can drop down, see on the daily. This is no longer relevant for me, so I can turn that off. And we can see we had a strong move up right here. Okay, so a pullback makes sense, but it doesn't have to pull back. It does not have to come back down here. It can continue north from here. Okay, so right now we are at an interesting level because this is a range low. If we look on the lower time frames, now on the 4H. Okay, so there's a very methodical approach to this as a price action trader. And if you can identify your levels, then you've done 90% of the work, okay? Because then you know exactly where you're willing or able to do business, where it makes the most sense, where the highest risk reward is. And so my most recent levels here, these will change, but these are the ranges that are directly in front of us. So right now, this is what we're working with, this range here between 28,550 and 26,900. Okay. And you can see, very interesting this morning, I actually took a short yesterday up here and I covered here. And the reason that I covered here, which normally I would just let this ride, but the reason that I covered here was because of this candle and because of this candle that followed it. Okay. This is not typical price action that you want to see, signs of a continuation, because you see the rejection, especially if we drop down out of the 15-minute, you see the rejection here back inside, and then this candle here. This is where I'm out. I don't really care what happens next. Maybe it continues to show weakness and breaks down here. Maybe we see a pattern and then it starts to break down, in which case I can get back into this trade. But while it chops around here at the range low, there is a higher probability that it at least tries to push up to the mid of this range that we're seeing here. Okay, so that would be back where I entered the position. And so that's why I covered on this short, for those of you that were copy trading me on that. And I also had a short running on Ethereum, which I covered for similar reasons. We will go into Ethereum in a moment here. So it's hard to say, because we had this strong 4H candle, and actually that was a 1H candle here. And then this one, it looked like it wanted to continue, but faked out a lot of late shorts here and a little bit of a squeeze. So now we're back inside. But overall, if you look at this, remember we mentioned this the other day, this 4H candle was the largest red candle that we saw through this entire rally, from here to here at least. And actually, you could probably go all the way back to the beginning of the year. Let's do that, actually. Let's see if we can find a candle that's bigger, a red candle that's bigger than what we just saw a few days ago. Okay, potentially this here. This one here. Okay, so this here, but this, and then it's sort of, we had a little bit of a distribution. It did head lower. Okay, so there were actually, no, that's still the largest red candle that we've seen since the beginning of the year. So what does that tell you? So still, even with the size of these two candles here, this is still larger. You can see it's very clear. I don't even have to measure that. Okay, so what does that tell you? It did bounce back up, but then failed to break above. So now this is showing signs of distribution at this point. But now the question is how long it will remain in this range for. It could be another day or two. It could happen at some point today, but my alerts are down at 26, I would say around 26,700 here, between 26,700, 26,800. And I'm looking for some momentum to the downside, and I'd be targeting back down to this 25,200 level at minimum. Okay. And then we've got something that we can really work with, because then we can see, okay, how is it interacting at this level? Is it showing strength? Is there weakness? Am I going to stay in this trade? But this right now, I'm flat because of what I saw here. Okay, so it might sort of chop around for a while. Actually, for me as a trader with my strategies, the way that they line up, I actually prefer to see periods of contraction followed by expansion. I don't really like to see an expansive move to the downside and then another expansive move to the upside. I don't like this. And this is where I will exit a trade, because this is sort of like FOMC vibes. It's not fun for most traders. If you can catch it both ways, good on you, but I am not able to do that. And I'm not willing to do that. I would rather just wait for consolidation and then wait to see. So in this case, we have on the lower time frames, you can see, okay, we're on the 15-minute now. This is one of my preferred timelines or time frames. You can actually identify a little bit of a range here, okay? And so if it breaks above this level, 27,200 with some conviction, then you know that you have a potential entry. But then is it really worth it when you're targeting maybe the mid of the range? I mean, that's up to you to decide. For me, it's not. For me, I would rather just sit this out, because again, I feel like we've already seen a couple of shows of weakness here. And so the probability for me is more downside. I'm perfectly happy sitting this out and waiting to see if it can get back up 28,500. That's great. But I'm not convinced, only because what we saw already here. Okay, you see how this made it was a lower high, okay, at this level here. And Ethereum actually did the exact same thing. Ethereum is continues to be weaker than Bitcoin. Now, when I entered Ethereum, I'm going to just break down the entry on this because I didn't explain it when I made the entry. But you can see this diagonal here, and you can see also, look at how many times it tried this level here, and then you have the swing fail right here. Okay, so back inside, deviation, okay, and starts to break down, and then you get the retest of the diagonal here, and then it breaks down. So I was short somewhere in here, okay, for Ethereum, and sort of had to ride out these waves here for a little bit, and then it finally broke down this morning. But now the question is, will it get back inside the range? I wouldn't short from this position. I exited Ethereum because of the strength of Bitcoin, but that doesn't mean that Ethereum can't continue falling. And actually, a lot of the alts that initially had a very strong bounce, like Injective, Phantom, those were the alt shorts that I had. They actually resumed their downtrend. And so it's tricky in these sorts of situations, because sometimes you'll be in a trade and it will be looking great, and then it will run all the way back up to near your entry, and then it will actually go back down where it was again, and all in the matter of about an hour or two. That's what happened to me today with Injective, and it was very frustrating. But so what I did was I did re-enter this trade. I was in good profit. I entered somewhere up here. This was like my average. I was averaging into this all the way, and actually waiting it out while I was underwater. And then it finally came all the way down, came all the way back up, all the way back down. I mean, these are like 5% moves here for Injective. And so what do you do in these cases? That's a 5.5% in like an hour, right? What do? Well, you obviously, it doesn't make sense to have a 1 or 2% stop on these trades. You have maybe a 10 or 15 or even 20% stop. And for swing trading, I don't know how people scalp this. For me, I cannot scalp these alts because there's just not enough liquidity. But I will swing trade them. And Injective is one that I've been eyeing because we have the distribution pattern for Bitcoin. So that's kind of giving a trigger for the rest of the alts. But also because Injective is showing the 3 drives pattern here. Okay, you can see 1, 2, 3, and then break above, deviation back inside. And then if you drop down lower time frame, you see a head and shoulders pattern. And then you see the dirty retest here, which is pretty typical in crypto, at least, after the breakdown from the head and shoulders. This is the neckline. And now we're finally broken down. Actually, maybe I'll add back. I do have a position here, but maybe I'll add more here, because you can see on the 4H, another rejection here. Okay, strong rejection. May hover here for a while. But we have to see what Bitcoin does, because if Bitcoin pushes back up, then Injective maybe comes all the way back up here again. And that's why I'll have looser stops. I had to actually exit this and for some profit, and then I had to re-enter on an 8x instead of a 10x because I wanted a looser stop. Okay, and so it's somewhere up here for that trade. So basically close, not too far away from break even on that trade, for those of you that maybe want to follow that. So I know I just jumped from Bitcoin to Injective, but so this pattern is actually playing out with all of the alts right now. Phantom is another one. And you can see the market structure on Phantom. I like this. I was shorting from up here. I got out of this too soon. This is a pattern for me that I need to remedy. Got out of this too soon, got back in, actually did make some good money on this, and then got out because of the price action earlier in the day, got back in. Just got to hold and wait, folks. Like, this is a classic. I mean, this is, you can see the lower highs and lower lows. This is not showing signs that it wants to just push all the way back up again, especially with what Bitcoin is doing. And I would say I'm targeting, this is actually a monthly range that we're looking at here. This is the 0.343. This is the mid, and then somewhere around 0.17. It could go all the way back. And that, I believe this is the yearly open. And I would go as far as to say that a lot of these alts will head back down to the yearly open at some point. That's my hot take on that. I'm not alone in that. There aren't many that believe that right now, but we'll see if Bitcoin comes down back below. In order for that to happen, for the alts to return to the yearly open, Bitcoin needs to come back below 25,200 and actually break down from there. Because if that happens, then Bitcoin's headed much, much lower, and all the alts are just going to get completely crushed. Ethereum will head much lower as well. So that's the kind of turning point. But I am taking swing positions. I do have swings in Injective and Phantom. I sort of missed the boat with Optimism. Wasn't really interested in Matic. You have to pick and choose. I just focused on those two. They're all pretty much the same, right? So, I mean, Optimism is at a support level right now. It could bounce here. I wouldn't personally fade this where it is right now. I would want to see one of those sort of short squeezes happen. Maybe it pushes back up to 15. Maybe it comes all the way back up here again, 230. I'm not keeping my hopes up with this. I'm also not really all that interested in trading it. So I chose Phantom and Injective over Optimism because of the price action and because of, see, this is pretty messy to me. At some point, you know, there was a time when I really liked Optimism and was trading it, and now I sort of lost interest because it wasn't as clear as some of the other charts. So that's sort of my thinking behind the alts. And there are times also where I just won't trade alts at all, especially if I don't have any clarity on Ethereum and Bitcoin. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm out. I'm not touching the alts. And you'll see I'll go through those phases where I'll just trade Bitcoin and Ethereum. So right now, among the two, Bitcoin is actually the cleanest, and it's the most obvious to me. We're basically at a critical level right now. And am I on the wrong chart? Yes. So I have a couple of Bitcoin charts because the platform that I trade on, 𝐬𝐸𝐧, with the USDT, it's actually slightly lower than the BTC USD on the index chart. But so what I will do, my strategy, because I know for Binance and Bybit, it's different. For those of you that trade on those platforms, they're all different, right? I use index because that's sort of the summation of them all. And I will plan my entries and take profits and exits based off of the actual 𝐬𝐸𝐧 chart. So this is sort of just giving me the overall view. And sometimes you will see things on the index chart that you don't see on the individual exchange charts. And sometimes you'll see things like on Binance that you won't see on the index chart. And maybe it's just sort of, it's specific to that platform. And so I like the index chart because it sort of keeps the noise to a minimum. It keeps the, you know, if you get a crazy wick on Binance, it might not show up on the index chart. And that wick, that could be the reason you make a really big decision about a trade. So that's just kind of my thinking, what I've come to. So I don't usually even look at the 𝐬𝐸𝐧 charts for the alts either, because I like to see some history on that, and I don't see a whole lot on 𝐬𝐸𝐧, where I'll be able to go all the way back with something like Phantom or Injective if I use, say, the Binance chart in that case. So it's just different strokes for different folks. Yeah, glad you got some money off that copy trade. I have no idea about what's up with 𝐶Z now. There's always something, you know. For weeks, people were talking about 𝐶Z buying, you know, $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. It's not that much. It's not that much. It's only 2%. It's only going to move the market cap about 2%. So that's, you know, that's not a whole lot when you look at the big picture. So like, who is it that's really buying? It wasn't 𝐶Z. If that was part of it, but it's not all. It's a very small aspect of it. You know, a lot of traders are thinking, well, when he finally just stops buying, then we can sell everything. Well, that's not really how it works. That's not how whales operate. There's many whales. 𝐶Z is just one small whale. There's a lot of whales. And some of them collaborate with each other and some of them don't. Some of them we know, some of them we don't. A lot of them we don't. And so that's just the way that it goes. So I ignore a lot of that. 𝐶Z did give a forward today. I don't know why. I don't know exactly what he was signaling, but maybe it was a warning. because the 4 is, ignore FUD. And so I do follow CZ. I have him up in my tweet deck. So sometimes he will say things. I actually got a tip off CZ when FTX, right as FTX was about to really go down. And I did make a really good amount of money shorting the FTT token from about $18 because of the lead that CZ gave. So it is worthwhile to pay attention to CZ, but when it comes to who's buying what, that's not really what you want to pay attention to. I'm not sure exactly what that was about this morning, why he said that, but we will see in the coming days. It will be revealed one way or another. So we're basically waiting for this range to break for Bitcoin. And this is what I like to see, right? This can happen. It can go on for days. The longer, the better for me, because then when I get a real break to the downside, it will most likely, the longer we have a contraction, the more obvious the expansion will be. And so if you get that 5-minute candle and it really breaks down, then there's most likely going to be a continuation, and that's when you jump in the trade. So I was asleep this morning when this happened, but I was already in the trade. So this, you could say that this was a range, right? Here's your value area right here. And then you have I'm on the 5-minute chart now. So we have a 5-minute candle. There's your first clue. Now, some might have felt a little bit uncomfortable with that first 5-minute breakdown there, okay? But then there's your second 5-minute candle, 27,433. And that's where okay, it's most likely we were just in this range for at least a day, right? It's hard to judge when it's on a 5-minute chart, but it was, yeah, it was a day. So we were in this range for a day, already showing some weakness because it already tried to push up not once but twice here. Couldn't quite make it back to the top of the range. So you're already kind of erring to the downside. And then you get that 5-minute break. Aggressive traders, you enter here, okay? And then a conservative trader, a little bit more conservative, I should say, enters here. Okay, so but in either case, you've got to have sort of a short-term bias in order to catch this, and then you maybe set your alert. So I was already in this trade, so it didn't really matter to me, and I didn't want to wake up for it. But this could have been, this level here, we know, okay, here's your range low. So right about before it starts to really break down is where I'd set my alert. So I'd set my alert somewhere up here, 27,700, and then you see the breakdown, and it goes off. Hopefully it doesn't wake you up. And then the benefit of this is what? There's a very high probability that it's going to continue. And so in that case, you can tighten your stops pretty good. Whereas you can't do this with alts. But with Bitcoin, Ethereum, you can tighten the stops. So now you could have, some people wouldn't feel comfortable with this, but you could have a 0.5% stop here. Of course, hindsight's 2020. And I probably wouldn't have entered after this 5-minute candle with a 0.5% stop. I might have waited. Let's just be a little logical about this. Let's say that we waited to here, okay? And I probably would have actually done a 1% stop, okay? So there's my entry, okay? And then boom, it continues. And you see the sort of bump here, but it's continued weakness, not really showing any signs of reversal here. So you're basically in profit right away, and you stay in profit here. Okay, that's the benefit of waiting and not trying to guess what's going to happen next. And then you have, this is a 2.5R trade. If you exited here, okay? Now, if you didn't exit, you're still in the trade. You're still looking at a 1.6R at present if you'd have entered this trade after this breakdown from here. Now, this would have looked different on the 15-minute chart. On the 15-minute chart, if you'd have waited for that candle, you would have been a little bit later, but you'd still be in profit here. Yeah, at this breakdown. So this is just basically, I'm ignoring everything else. I have the greater context, but I'm not letting all this noise get in the way. The greater context is, look, massive Marubozu, well, not a Marubozu, massive red candle here, biggest of this since the beginning of the year, probably before the beginning of the year, and breaks back, breaks down, fails twice to get above to get back to the top. Now you're flipping your short-term bias is to the downside. So now you have that on the macro, and then you're looking on the micro and you're looking, okay, you're looking for that breakdown of this value area that has been established after a period of contraction. So now we have enough contraction, and it's doing it again here. Okay. So I'm sharing this with you to give you, I'm giving you a sense of this is how I trade. This is one of my major strategies here that I'm sharing with you. And I will put this into a course and I'll make it as clear as day. I'm already writing it out, and I'm going to make the video soon. But here's your entry based on the 5-minute chart. And I find that most of the time when you get a 5-minute candle, I've back tested this. When you get a 5-minute candle and it breaks the value area, it doesn't necessarily have to be at a critical level. But if the candle is big enough relative to those around it, again, it wasn't super obvious here, but here was your real tell, okay? Then you know that there's a very strong likelihood this is your edge, because you know that there's a likelihood that the momentum is going to continue in that direction. You're just getting on board. You're following, you're floating downstream, you're moving with the wind. It's a no-brainer, right? And so even if you're wrong half the time, which you won't be, even if you're wrong half the time and you end up with an average 2R trade, you're still in profit, right? You're still in profit. So that's your edge. So finding the momentum, finding the real breaks after the periods of consolidation, contraction, whatever you want to call it, that's what we're looking for here. So I'm sharing this with those of you that are really following this closely now. Most people don't care. They don't realize the significance of this. But if you can actually use this, you can hammer this home. You risk 1% on a trade. Well, you just made 2% on this trade. 2 to 3%. You just increased your entire portfolio that much just off of a 1% risk. And that's assuming that we don't push down any lower from here. I would say that there's a higher likelihood that what happens at this point is that it starts to do this, comes back up maybe. This is what we want to see here, okay? We want to see some more consolidation. The move needs to be digested, and then eventually it's just breaks through there again. And you've got a repeat of what I just showed you here. That's how the price moves. That's what we want to see. But so when you start seeing the price do something like this, then forget it. I don't trade it. I won't trade it. And that's why I don't trade most altcoins. Like XRP, I just don't like, I don't like it. Even Injective is kind of pushing it for me. Injective was pissing me off this morning. I tell you, it's not the same. It's a different monster. So Bitcoin is the cleanest right now. Ethereum, ETH BTC. If we look ETH BTC, and this is where I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I wanting to trade? Ethereum or Bitcoin? If it's just between those two, which one do I want to trade? Well, Ethereum right now is below the mid. I did say it would revisit. This was a 2021 low here for ETH BTC. I think it's going to come back down there. I mean, it looks like it at this point, right? It's finally broken down decisively beneath this mid, and it's not showing any signs that it wants to come back. Okay, it's not really, it's kind of consolidating right now. I don't know if I would short this over Bitcoin. Now it's just kind of like, well, I'm not really sure. So maybe I'll look at Ethereum and see if the chart is clean. Somewhat, yeah. And actually, in a downtrend, this candle right here on the 4H would be a sign of continuation, usually. But we're not really, we can't say that we're in a downtrend yet. So that's not really enough of a signal for me. But with Ethereum, it's already below the range here. And it's kind of struggling. But if Ethereum can push back up, then it's probably going to head higher. Maybe revisit somewhere up here. Maybe. I'm not saying it's going to do that. But if it does get back inside, then you're targeting potentially all the way back up to 1836. So it could continue to distribute. It can do this for however long it wants to. But so in this case, again, we want to see consolidation, but you can see that it is weaker than Bitcoin. Why? Because look at the pattern here versus what we're seeing. It's showing all my emails versus what we're seeing here. I've been getting a lot of spam emails lately. I think I need to remove the contact form on my website because it's just literally just getting flooded now. I think email is becoming a thing of the past. Just got to DM me on Twitter if you want my attention now. But you can see that Ethereum does look weaker than Bitcoin. Okay. But I'm not really in a position where I don't like this price action. I want to see a nice neat box. Okay. And of course that rarely happens, but when it does, and you can identify that box, that value area where most of the price action is occurring, and then it breaks free from there, that's where a momentum trader is really engaging, is really starting to pile into a trade. So so the larger ranges that we're working with for Bitcoin, I'm actually looking at a monthly. It's the July. If you see, where's July? Is it July? Hold on. Let me get rid of this for a minute. My most recent levels, and then we'll look at. No, not that one. Not last week. See, sometimes I will adjust. I'll have a few different ranges that I look at. This was the week of March 12th. For some reason, I can't find it. Am I on the right? Huh. Okay. Well, it doesn't really matter right now because we know what we're working with. We know what we're working with. It's very clear. These two levels, 26,900 to 28,500, and then you've got 25,250 beneath that. So there's a pretty thin move down to there once it really does break down, which I actually do believe that it will. Just given this price action, I do believe that it will do that. Meanwhile, we have the dollar. It's potentially finding support here. This is a critical mid-level that was between this high here. I actually have to really zoom out to show you this. It's actually very clean on the Dixie, because this we have this level here at 88, about $89 and $115, and we literally wicked to the mid of this and found support. It wicked off of it, okay? And this is also the mid of this smaller range here. So the price is very much fractal, and it is very much finding support here. But it might chop around in this area here. So that's not really giving a whole lot of clarity with what the S&P is going to do and what Bitcoin and Ethereum are going to do. But S&P, does this not look like a series of lower highs to you? And if we see that on the daily, it'll be more obvious. So I do have a short position here on the SPY. And I actually will ultimately, I'm hoping to be targeting somewhere down here and potentially even lower than that. Again, if that happens with the SPY, it is up today slightly, but the odds are not in favor of the SPY. And actually, what we're seeing is a lot of the mega cap tech stocks, like Google, sold off today. You can see my short here on Google. Google sold off today after what? What was the sign? This is a weekly range here. Okay, this weekly level, pretty critical level, deviated above here. See the wicks? See the deceleration? That's an automatic short. Okay, for me, we're just playing the ranges here. That's a swing position. So entries and exits, it's different than what I just shared with you earlier for Bitcoin. But are there any questions about any other charts? Basically, we're seeing signs with the alts, especially. I mean, Optimism's down almost 10% today. Phantom's down 8%. Injective's down 7%, and they were down yesterday as well. So if they're selling off, there's your canary in the coal mine. Bitcoin is holding up remarkably well, considering the 27K is the level that it's really testing right now. We were at 28K yesterday. We could be at 26K tomorrow. It's too soon to tell whether it's going to really dive down. We'll have to see. But there's a lot of instability right now in the world. I am trying my best not to follow it. for too long, because you will literally start to lose your mind and get angry and emotional, and that's going to influence you as a trader and make it more difficult to make money. So made some good money so far today. We'll see whether it was too soon for me to exit those trades. 18 months left for Bitcoin to see new all-time high. I guess that depends on the time frame that you're, or the how you view the cycles. I'm not sure how you're based on the halvings, maybe. Like I said, when I pulled up the $1 million, we talked about the $1 million possibility for Bitcoin. I'm not saying it's not possible. I don't want to ever say that. But again, if we get back below 25,200, then it's 90% chance, 95% chance that it won't get there in 90 days. If we stay above here, if we get back here and then shoot back up again, maybe it continues up. I would say probably, for me, in my humble opinion, 99% chance we don't get to $1 million in 3 months' time. That would be pretty, there'd have to be some pretty, we don't want that to happen, because if that happened, there would be absolute, there'd have to be absolute craziness in with the banks and people just in absolute panic mode. That wouldn't be fun. There'd be riots. It just would not, it's not what we want to see. So even though, yeah, of course you might make a lot of money, it's just, as far as the state of affairs of the world, if that were to happen, especially that quickly, would not be pretty in my humble opinion. So not really any questions today, guys. What other alts? I haven't looked at any of the alts aside from these top 4 here, Matic and Optimism. Let's see what Matic is doing today. Do you see the distribution here? You see the another head and shoulders here, a very sharp head and shoulders, but got back inside this range here. Again, most likely targeting the mid here at minimum for Matic. But I think Matic will probably come all the way back down to 40 cents at some point. And it's, you could say, well, it's kind of in an uptrend. I mean, it's kind of not really, kind of more of a range. This is a range until it really breaks out above this $1.20 level. But Matic has held up really well as an alt. We'll see how that plays out. If things start to get really bad in the US, as far as they're gonna basically, they're gonna hit us with everything they've got. And when they do that, people are gonna probably panic. It's not gonna destroy crypto, but it could destroy a lot of altcoins. And so for me personally, I had an unlock yesterday and I immediately took it and sold it off. I stabled it. Stable coins are also going to be become an issue at some point. I don't know exactly where Tether has their reserves, but I hope they're not making it obvious to anybody, because they could easily freeze those banks, or and that would be a big problem for a lot of people. So of course Bitcoin could continue to be a safe haven for all of us. I think it will always be a safe haven for us. And so far, Ethereum, even though it is weaker than Bitcoin, it is holding up better than I expected it to at this stage in the game where we're at. So if we look based off of, everybody's got different ways to measure the cycles, but if we look based off of, I just measured the duration of previous bear markets. If we were to go off of the duration of the 2018 bear market, then we would break through accumulations sometime around April 7th. If we were to go based off of the last bear market, if we were to go based off of the 2015 bear market, that would be October 10th. Somewhere in the middle is July 9th. If it were to actually break above. But as I mentioned, you have to anticipate that there's going to be black swans. I don't see why there wouldn't be more black swan events, at least one. There could be multiple black swan events. And so in that case, I don't want to say that it's safe to be accumulating Bitcoin. It could be that we have a systemic issue that comes up and Bitcoin does the opposite of what it did during COVID, where it actually not only holds steady, but really rockets up. But it's just human nature. Even though people know that Bitcoin is the safe bet here, they haven't really put their money where their mouth is in a significant way. Now, if we see it really break back above this range here and back into 30K, 32K and continue to show strength, then I'm going to be a lot more optimistic that there's going to be a lot more upside, especially if that starts to happen and the stock market we start to see more of a decorrelation. But when people talk about the decoupling, okay, that really hasn't happened yet. Even though it's in the last couple of weeks, you could say, yes, it's happened. Over this year, it's definitely, there's a big difference between how much Bitcoin has increased and how much the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. But still, we have to look at the bigger picture. So if this happened over a couple more weeks and we see another big push up like we saw here, then I would say, okay, this is changing everything. But even then, I would say, look, it's not bull or bear. Let's get beyond that thinking and just brace yourself, because there could be a black swan or something that they throw at us that's going to really crush it down again. So this is a really good environment if you're a trader. If you're not a trader and you're curious about trading, you can check out my C3 courses. They will teach you what you need to know. I also share a lot in the C3 Discord, so you can join that as well. I also have a book out. I've been putting out content nonstop for the last couple of years now publicly. And so I'm not I'm not the definitive source for all of this. You can learn a lot of things for free on YouTube, of course. But I'm telling you that the volatility is good, but not so good if you're an investor. And those, many people are gloating right now, those that bought at 18, 20K. We just revisited 20K, like a week and a half ago. So can it happen again? Of course it can. In this sort of an environment, it can. This is a very different macro environment than what we saw during the bull market, during the previous bull market before that, during the bull market before that. So I'm hopeful. I would love to see it come back above and break back into this here and actually hold in this range. Because this is initially you would expect there to be some resistance here. So this is, so far, we can't, we don't have any evidence that it's really going to break down. And I would rather see it. I don't mind, because I can trade in both directions. I would, of course, rather see it push up from here. But it's just that from the recent price action, you see, yeah, it could break back above within the next hour or so and then push all the way back up here and then could continue from there. We don't really know yet, but this is what I would rather see, but I'll trade it both ways. So okay, so I think that's basically it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not interested in these charts because I downgraded a lot of these just because I caught some of the move with Lido. The Lido's already back down to the bottom of this range. I don't want to trade that. I mean, up here it was really, I think we caught some of we're trading this up here. I can't even remember anymore, but it's not really of interest to me. Solana is sort of similar. It's just been not really doing a whole lot these days. You want to find where there is some movement, but where it's also it's clean and there's clearly defined levels that you can work with, which you could technically trade this, but there's just better out there for me. Let's see if there's any others. If AVAX has been, yeah, I mean, AVAX is sort of in the middle of this range here. I'm interested at the extremes. I mean, closer to the extremes. BNB, I haven't, yeah, that this sort of follows Bitcoin more closely than a lot of the other alts, but still you get some. I mean, up here I was sort of interested, but just wasn't as appealing as some of the others. But BNB easily could come back down. Here's the mid of this range here is around 276, and then we're looking at 208. That's a pretty big daily candle though. But then you see what happened here. I mean, this, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't like trading BNB. There's certain ones you're just not gonna like it. It's like some people, they don't like golden retrievers. I don't know why, but that's just how they are. Some people, they just like the little, what are those dogs? The Chihuahuas. And they drive me nuts because all they do is bark at you and like just for anything. And they're just so intimidated by everything. And they just have like this like ego complex. And some people just love them to death. Some people just love trading XRP. And I'm like, I don't get it. I try to understand this. Like, why? What's the thrill of this? And I think some of them, like, look at this. I'm not interested in this. This is garbage. It's pumping. Okay. We know that it's usually always a scam. So how much higher is it going to go? I don't know. If it gets up here, maybe I'm interested. I could care less about this. This is a chihuahua to me. You know, it's just making a bunch of noise. It's not like, this is not my friend. This is not man's best friend because I'm not going to make money on this. It's a gamble. So a lot of gamblers like these charts. And I'm not into it. Sushi, what is this? What is this? I mean, we're down at the range. We're down at the bottom here. Okay. And of all of this, it's no, thanks. And then you start getting into like alts, the lower cap alts, and then it's just even worse. Near is, I haven't been looking at this really in months because it's just not giving anything. DYDX, we were trading up here, but you could see even this one did actually come back to the mid. Got out of this one too soon too, but did come back to the mid. Now it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's possible if it pushes back up again up here, maybe I'll set a level here and we'll see. I don't know. I have my doubts that it'll get back up there, but it is cleaner. This is cleaner than XRP, right? You have to admit that it looks cleaner than that. There's more of sort of a pattern to it. There's like, you can get a quick read on it. And then you kind of just, it's delegated to my red list. My red list, these are the bad boys. These are the ones that the problem kids that I'm like, I'm going to put you aside. Maybe I'll deal with you later. Maybe I'll set an alert. And if it goes off, then I'll move you over to my main list. Okay. So 4 alts kind of made the grade right now. And that's it. And then I can focus on a few stocks, and then I can focus on Bitcoin and Ethereum. But do you think they're going to push Bitcoin to 35, 40K? I mean, I'm fine with it. That'd be great, because what happens when Bitcoin pumps? I get more engagement. I get, and the sentiment changes. People are happier. There's less bickering. Of course, there's always going to be like bulls and bears going at it with each other, but there's less, I think. There's more just positive vibes. So 35, 40K, let's do it, But first it's got to clear 32K. This got to clear this first. And then it's a quick move to somewhere around 36, 37. Then you've got this gap here to fill. So but this is gonna be tough to break. We've got to see what happens here. I would love for nothing more than it to actually come back down again. This would be healthy for Bitcoin. Healthy retest, some strength, show of strength, breaks back above, stays in this range for a little bit, okay, and then breaks above, and then continues to sort of stair step from there all the way up to 37K. That would be sort of a healthy move, and that's where we say, okay, we're not in accumulation for sure. This is markup. And unless there's a black swan, like what we saw in 2020. Unless there's a black swan, then we can continue the resumption of the uptrend. So that would actually be ideal, I think, especially for a lot of bag holders out there. But for now, we have to really hone in on what's directly in front of us and ignore the rest of it, because it's just not important. So it's just like our minds have that capability. We sort of prune things. It's like, when you forget someone's name or whatever it is, if it's important, your mind will remember it. If you've designated that that's important. And so right now, so as not to confuse yourself, don't try to speculate about what's going to happen so much. Try to just respond to what is actually in front of you and what you're seeing. And so start with, get a context, and then establish that. And then you start to establish, okay, dropping down lower time frames, what's happening? Do we have a pattern? Are we at a critical level? Is this a recent range? And then start to trade accordingly. But this is a trade zone for me. So I am paying closer attention to this, especially if we get a breakdown here. If we get a breakout, I'm just going to watch it. I already made some money today. I'm not really attached if it pushes up. I would be more interested if it did push up and then gets back up here, and then we get some, again, like I said earlier in the stream, we get that consolidation, we get that contraction, and then boom, okay, entry. Follow the momentum in this case. That's where I'd be interested in this. I just have my doubts as to whether that will happen, but try not to let your bias feed too much into it, because then when it does happen, sometimes maybe you're counter trading that and you're in disbelief. Whereas if you're more objective, you're thinking, okay, well, it was a possibility. I entertained the possibility and now it's happening. So I'm going to trade according to that. And that's the mental game of trading. Someone was asking me about how trading can lead to self-mastery. How is that possible? And of course, it has everything to do with self-mastery, because we're mastering our emotions, how we respond to what's happening. Instead of reacting, instead of being nervous and anxious and trying to anticipate and fumbling around, we just are very calm and collected, and we, if we're wrong, we're wrong. We are able to flip bias. We're able to pivot. We're listening to what is happening on the chart. So we're watching the candles as they form, and we're able to tune out all the noise with what's happening on crypto Twitter and what's happening in the news. It's not really that important, because what's important is how people are reacting to that, and we can clearly visibly see that. So you don't necessarily need to go and get freaked out because there was something on Disclosed TV or some other news outlet that's proclaiming the end of the world again. It's just, okay, well, how are the collective emotions being represented here? And so, of course, it's self-mastery and being able to manage your own emotions when the trade starts to move against you, or when you're in a good trade and then it moves against you, as happened with me this morning. It never really ends as far as the tests are concerned. And so someone who is really has a level of self-mastery, they're very well organized. They know where they're able to do business or willing to do business. They're quickly will admit when they're wrong, and they'll cut the trade, and they'll keep their risk management in check, so they won't risk more than they can afford to lose. They're not going to just throw their entire account into a trade. Those are some of the basics, but then there's a lot of refinements with that too. So just like different strategies start to arise when you feel more calm and clear, and you can see things clearly. So a lot of the times, this morning I was a little bit frustrated because an alert went off at 5 a.m. and I like to meditate in the mornings, but sometimes I have to spend an hour or two just looking at charts and tracking a trade. And still, though, I will do certain practices. I'll try and really breathe deeply, and then I still will meditate at some point in the day, because I need that, hopefully in the morning. because that gives me that I have the regulation of my nervous system to where it doesn't really matter so much. I've already sort of objectively come to terms with whatever happens in the trade, whether I lose money or make money. I'm detached from that. All I know is that I'm doing what is aligned with what I know, and and that's the best that I can do. And so being content in all circumstances, that's part of self-mastery. Being equal, equanimity, and being completely detached. And all of this is all yogic philosophy. This is all in all the ancient spiritual traditions. And there's plenty of Sanskrit terms for all of this. It's part of self-mastery. And so I am actually surprised that there aren't more people, that are more traders, that are talking about meditation, that are talking about, spiritual practices, because that will give you an edge. That will give you an absolute edge. And you see a lot of traders, there are traders who are immensely successful, but they don't mention any spiritual practices, and they spend inordinate amounts of time staring at a computer screen, smoking cigarettes, drinking beer. All of that is a distraction. All of that is going to keep you from, it's going to cloud your judgment, your discernment. So it's amazing to me, because I see some of these traders and they are incredibly prosperous and they've been doing it a lot longer than me. But if they cut certain things and they added a few other things like meditation, they would be 100 times better. I can guarantee it. And so if you establish those habits, and you focus on, and you treat trading as an approach, as a means of attaining self-mastery, which, let's face it, no matter what you're doing in life, it should be as a means to attaining self-mastery. And if you're not consciously on that path, then what are you doing? Right? I mean, what are you doing? You're just kind of wandering around aimlessly, not getting anywhere, not doing anything, not accomplishing anything. It's like, if you bring that level of awareness into what you're doing, then anything can virtually become a means of self-mastery. Like if you're, my brother's a carpenter, and he works with, like, very precise as far as how he pieces things together, and it takes a lot of mental focus, and he has to, like, climb up on, massive skyscrapers, and he has to deal with all kinds of crazy people every single day in New York City. And that's just part of the game. And that's helping him to become more of a centered human being. Someone who's more like a warrior is someone who can handle whatever's thrown at them, whatever sort of energy is thrown at them, and they can just sort of dissolve it. And that's really what self-mastery is about. And so when it comes to trading, we're just, whatever they throw at us, we're just going to respond to it. So maybe you were long here, and it maybe you got in here, and then it just immediately dumped the other way. Well, you used proper risk management, you got stopped out, on to the next trade. Or maybe you shorted it. Maybe you flipped your bias quickly because you saw what was happening on the lower time frames, and you flipped. Or either way, lesson learned. You're not carrying that emotion through the day. It's not affecting you. It's not affecting your relationships. It's not affecting whatever else you're going to do that day. So this is all self-mastery. Trading is it's self-mastery. It's the surest path to it for those that are dedicated to it. It's not easy, I'll tell you that. I mean, I definitely have good days and bad days, and I've spent the better part of 20 years meditating, on average, probably a couple hours a day. And I definitely can't say that I have attained self-mastery. No, not even close. But I can say that I've come a long way because of my commitment to that. And so that's probably the biggest draw to me as a trader, is that the fact that it really does test you emotionally. It tests your discipline, it tests your commitment, it tests, your willingness to withstand the drawdowns, and, your patience. Your patience is tested repeatedly. Like sometimes entering a trade and waiting days, sometimes weeks for it to actually unfold. and then it does, and then it doesn't, you know, and that's the real test, is how are you going to respond in those situations? And that carries over into your connections with your children and your loved ones. Like, how are they going to respond? How are you going to respond when they are freaking out in front of you? And, you know, when your wife is yelling at you for something, are you going to flip out and, you know, and add fuel to the fire because you're upset because of a trade that you lost on earlier in the day? Or are you going to be calm and composed and have sort of integrity? You know, this is the test. So everything is about self-mastery, and trading is no different. Trading is actually sort of heightens that. It's like amplifies everything, because money's involved, and because money is so, it's so important to us. Money is energy, but it's also a medium of exchange, and we need it, right? And so this tests your, how you know, your relationship to money, which is ultimately tied directly to your relationship to yourself. Am I going to be in scarcity or abundance? If I lose on the trade, am I going to let it bring me down for the rest of the week? Or am I going to take it in stride and just take it as, this is part of the process. I'm going to have losing trades. Can't avoid that. But I'm just going to focus on developing an edge. And this is why I'm sharing with you. I shared with you this strategy earlier. Look, if you focus on getting the highest R multiple possible, then you won't be so concerned when you have maybe a 30 or 50% hit rate, because you'll still end up in profit. And so that's how, sort of a reassurance to traders, where most would just kind of lose it. Like, you're telling me I'm only going to have 25% of my trades in profit. Well, if you have a 3R average on those winning trades, then it doesn't matter, right? All that matters is that eventually you gradually start to churn out a profit. So, so I don't have any spot right now. I don't have any spot. Maybe that will work against me, but I mean, I've considered buying Bitcoin at several points. I did have some at 16,800, but I sold it. So I don't have any spot. I can't give advice about that, but I can just share where I'm at. I don't have any spot, and I did release the small cap superstars. A lot of those I probably should have bought beginning of the year, because they went up a lot. Optimism was one, Aptos was another. They went up a lot, but they'll probably head back down again at some point. So um, it's a different market, and we don't know what's going to happen with altcoins yet. We don't know how they're going to be treated. And even though from a common sense perspective, even if there is regulation in the United States, that should translate to the rest of the world. Well, they're trying to at least set the tone for the rest of the world. And so I'm not saying that altcoins are just going to disappear, but it will have a dramatic impact on the price, most likely. So we're just playing probabilities, and the probabilities are not in favor of a large majority of altcoins right now. And that's why I don't have any spot positions. So I have been on this stream for about an hour now, so I'm gonna hop off and get some food because I haven't eaten today. And I hope that you all got some value from this. I know that sometimes I tend to digress, but I know also that some of you are really listening intently to what I'm sharing. And if you have watched this far, please like the video and maybe share it with your friends, and be on the lookout. Those critical levels, if you're in the C3, you'll probably get a notification when I trade. But I'm mostly focused on Bitcoin right now. I don't really care much for Ethereum, and I do have those alt positions that I'll continue to hold for the time being. So, okay, hope you all enjoyed the video. Have a beautiful day.